Hey YouTube, it's that guy here. Today I want to talk about a pocket knife that most guys and gals who have been in the military have seen or used or had, at least up until the late 90s. I don't know what they carry now, or if they still issue these. There were tons of these made. This is a stainless steel GI pocket knife, or they were also called demo knives. Don't know why, but some people call that. I just called it the stainless steel GI knife. I got this particular knife in 1978 when I was over in Germany. I was stationed at Simbach. And I also happen to know this knife was made in 1978. You can see it right there. And as you can see, it's made by Camillus. Get a couple specs out of the way. The blade is 2 3/4 inches long. Closed is 3 3/4 inches long. Its overall length is 6.5 inches. The bail is about 1.5 inches. The knife is a 1/2 inch thick. It's 2 layers, and it weighs in at 3.5 ounces. Now this particular knife, as you saw the date on it, I've had since 1978. From 1978 until about, I want to say 80 or 81, I carried this all the time. I was in a tactical unit, mobile unit. We would tear down our equipment, move it, and go different places. I would use this knife to pry things open, latches and so on. Open, back in the 70s, the Air Force had C rations. They didn't have MREs. So in order to get into your C-rat, if you didn't have one of these handy little guys, oops, this is a new P38, P39. It's a can opener. I saw it at a gun show, and it was, I think they were about 50 cents or so. I picked up a few of them. I still have my original on my keyring that I got in the 70s. But if you didn't happen to have that with you, and you had your pocket knife, at the can opener. And if there was any confusion, I'm sure some bureaucrat thought it was important to put on there, can opener. I also use this can opener to not only open cans, but to rope and string and cordage of different types. I would use the point on that to untie some tight knots sometimes. If they were too tight, just cut it. The long screwdriver blade on this had the bottle opener, which we had a lot of bottles back then that you needed a cap lifter for, but it was a fairly substantial screwdriver and fairly thick. I use this to pry open many things that I was afraid to use my Swiss Army knife on, because mainly the Swiss Army knife I had to buy, this was issued to me, so I could use and abuse it. And I could always get another one if it broke. And then you have your awl. The awl's got a fairly good point on it and a decent edge. When I went to survival school in '83, I carried this knife with me. The one they issued us, even though it was newer than this, was really worn out. Unfortunately, I had the blade on the one they issued me at survival school would just flop out. So fortunately, I had my own I used out there in the field. Came in quite handy. The all I used on a ferro rod to get some sparks off of it and get fires started. Now, these knives, when Camillus was making them, or Camillus was making them, they have a date on them, as I showed. Now, I bought a knife, and the only reason I got this one, and the only difference on this one, is that it says U.S. Air Force, or USAF. It was about a year after I retired. I saw it and I'm going, I got to get this. And if you look on, if I can get it just right. See if we can get it here. Hopefully you can see it. It says 1994 on it. There's nothing else different on this knife. Even says can opener. The only difference being that it says USAF. Now, I think I paid, well, I got that for free. It was issued to me. This one I think I paid about $15 for, and the only reason I was willing to do that was because it had USAF on it. The knife itself has got decent fit and finish. It's a little rough, but you look at the one that was issued me, and it's a little rough also. If you're going to do a lot of whittling or carving, this knife is not very comfortable. It's got very, not sharp, but prominent edges on it that will, if you're not wearing gloves or something, you're going to get blisters on your hand if you're doing a lot of cutting with it. But for just doing quick little jobs, not a bad little knife. Also, a lot of us, when I was in the Air Force in tactical units, this knife got used for all kinds of things we wouldn't use our personal knives for. There were many a times that guys needed to run a string up into a tree, especially the commo guys, the communications folks, I should say. They needed to run a wire for an antenna up into a tree, tie a string onto this, and throw it up in the tree over a limb. If you lost it, it was no big deal. We could get another one. Using it as a weight to, again, throw string or line across a couple of between vehicles and whatnot, to hook up a clothesline or something. We would use this as basically a fob on the end of the line to give it some weight so we could throw it to other people and then string it up to whatever we were going to use it for. Darn knives are almost indestructible to a point, but give a GI a chance, he can destroy anything. I've seen these knives be put through all kinds of abuse and survive. I don't think the government was paying more than $4 or $5 a piece for them, and that was back in the 70s. They're a pretty good quality knife. The ones now made in China, I don't know. Haven't had any experience with any of them yet. But the ones that were made in the States by Camillus are good quality, have held up. You'll find these in people's toolboxes, tackle boxes, and so on from when they were in the military. They got them. There's some of the older ones from the 60s, I believe, will have a stud on the screwdriver to help open it up. Other than that, since they were made back in the, well, I think they first started making these, not Camillus, but the government had made these back in World War II and on up until the 90s that I know of. I haven't been able to find out if they still have them in the military, if they're still being issued or not, or who's making them. That's it. Hope you've enjoyed this review of the GI stainless steel pocket knife. And remember, always be prepared.